Okay, this is take two, and we'll see if we can get through the lecture without there being any more delays or difficulties. Yes, well, you see in front of you on this slide some photographs of Nibiru taken from various years and various places, obviously. Um, the most remarkable thing or most noticeable thing about these photos is the dots of light stringing out in various directions from Nibiru itself. These are actually what Zetatalk refers to as the string of pearls. The string of pearls refers to the moon system of Nibiru. Nibiru has two major moons, but it has a number of others, and we don't know the number. Zetatalk has never actually revealed the number of minor moons. Now, sometimes when viewing Nibiru, trying to photograph it, we don't see the moons. In fact, most of the photographs of Nibiru do not have the moon's visible, but at certain occasions, when the angle is just right, those moons show up as a string of pearls. So we got this strange hybrid dwarf star planet, Nibiru, carrying along a whole lot of moons behind it, two major moons and a number of others, which are the string of pearls. And these are some good photographs from various years. The photograph from 2010 was actually from the NASA website. I think it's from the SOHO orbital telescope, or perhaps the Stereo A, Stereo B. Okay, next slide, please.
Sorry, what we got?
And we can go to the next one after that. That's just for reference. Okay, now you may remember that the last time I spoke, which was a fortnight ago, sorry, 2 fortnights ago, about a month ago, I covered the hoopla and the speculation and the hype and the misinformation about Comet 33I. It's actually 3I, not 31, Atlas. This was first discovered in July of this year, and there's been a lot of discussion about what it actually means. In the presentation Noto Nibiru 9 from the 2nd of October, I mentioned comments from Michio Kaku, the American astronomer and astrophysicist. Also mentioned an individual at Harvard University, Avi Loeb, who have very differing views on Atlas, the comet Atlas, and what it means or may mean. I'm not going to go into those details now because we're moving on. But recently, it appears the Atlas, the comet Atlas, it appears to have changed its orbit or trajectory. However, the authorities and the scientific community are denying that that has happened. Now, the thing is, it's either changed its orbit slash trajectory from what it was earlier calculated, or it hasn't. That should be a fairly straightforward matter. It shouldn't be a matter of debate or discussion, but apparently it is. And we'll try to unpack exactly what is going on here. Next slide, please. All right, the media or certain segments of it, most segments of it, do not appear to be happy in broadcasting this change of orbit. I went to access an article on the Reddit website, Reddit, I think, astronomy or Reddit space. It was titled Interstellar Object 3I Atlas may have changed course. New trajectory suggests approach toward Earth. That was what the title was. Now, to my surprise, and I guess I shouldn't have been surprised, but to my surprised naivety, let's put it that way, I found it had been removed from the site. And here's the explanation for the removal that is offered on the Reddit website. Hello, VixMax, that's the code name for the poster. Your submission, Interstellar Object 3I Atlas may have changed course, new trajectory suggests approach toward Earth, has been removed from Reddit space because it has a sensationalized or misleading title. Ooh, so we don't want the masses to read or hear about what you're suggesting because it's just misinformation, disinformation. We don't want people to know about it. Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess we should have expected that response. Next slide, please. All right, what we know, or rather what the powers that be, the media and the scientific establishment want us to believe about the current status of the comet is as follows. And I generally believe these facts that are stated. This is from the website space.com. The title is You Won't See Interstellar Comet 3I Atlas Zoom Closer to the Sun on 30 October, which is today, of course. Perihelion for 3I Atlas takes place on October 30th, today. The interstellar interloper will be 1.35 astronomical units, and that translates to 125 million miles or 202 million kilometers from the sun. Now, that's perihelion, our closest approach to the sun, not to Earth. That should be kept in mind. And one astronomical unit is about 93 million miles or 150 million kilometers. So it's still away from the sun, even though it's at perihelion. Unfortunately, Atlas moved into solar conjunction at the end of September. When this happened, it became lost in the sun's glare as it moved toward the back of the sun, out of sight from Earth. And that was covered in the October 2nd lecture on Nibiru and Atlas, which I gave. It will not reappear in Earth's morning sky until later in November or the beginning of December, meaning the telescopes on Earth and in Earth orbit will miss out seeing 3I Atlas at perihelion. Now that sounds straightforward enough, and I happen to believe that that's probably the truth, or most of the truth, that we are given from the astronomical community about the visibility of the comet. Next slide, please. Okay, I looked on the Google search engine to try to find other articles on the situation of the comet. Here's what was posted, and this is an AI overview. Now, I don't really trust AI, but this is what the powers that be, the establishment, the authorities want the masses to believe. Because AI is so wonderful and everything that's been posted via AI, we should believe that that's what they want us to believe, think, or anyway. Comet 3I Atlas is not changing its orbit, but it is following a stable hyperbolic trajectory through the solar system, while outgassing causes minor predictable adjustments. Now keep that phrase in mind, if you will, when we come to later slides. Outgassing causes minor predictable adjustments. What is outgassing? Outgassing occurs when the ice of the comet melts and turns into little gas jets. And those little gas jets can move the trajectory or course of the comet slightly. That's certainly a scientific fact as well as far as I understand. But they're saying the outgassing are not significant changes to the path. The comet remains on a one-time path as its speed prevents the sun's gravity from capturing it into a permanent orbit. All right, that's what the establishment, the powers that be, want the masses, we the masses, to think. Next slide, please. Well, according to Zetatalk, the comet is actually changing course or orbit or trajectory. And this is from their website. Not really sure what the source is, but you can see on the left the old trajectory. And at the top of that diagram, you can see in sort of the broken line with the arrow at the end that Atlas was supposed to pass by the sun and off into interstellar space and into story. On the right-hand side, we can see the new trajectory with added acceleration thrust. It's wrapping around the sun instead of flying by the sun and saying, hello and goodbye, sun, we're still quite away and we're going off in interstellar space. It's apparently curving inward closer to the sun. Now, the diagram, the part of the diagram where you see the blue arrow and the little dot, that's the Earth. So it appears from this diagram that Atlas is scheduled to fly close by or closer to Earth. That's not true as far as I'm concerned. There's no danger to the Earth from this comet. The comet won't come close. So that part of the diagram is not correct. Next slide, please. Okay, this is from an October posting on Zetatalk. Atlas is being drawn toward Nibiru because of Nibiru's immense gravity and magnetic draw. Nibiru is a massive planet, 23 times as massive as the Earth, and 4 to 5 times the diameter. The Earth is, in the cosmic scheme of things, it's not a big planet, but for us humans, the Earth is pretty big. You get on a flight taking 10 or 15 or 20 hours from Australia to whatever part of the world, and you can experience just how big the Earth is in terms of our human perception. So Nibiru is 4 to 5 times the diameter, which is a huge object. The repulsion force. Okay, now Zeta talks in or discusses in other posts about both the attractive force, which occurs between planetary bodies, but also a repulsive force. So according to Zeta and they don't go into detail, so I can't give it a detailed explanation, planets have an attractive force, but they also have a repulsive force. And I think the details of that are very complex, very involved. Okay, they're talking about the repulsion force. It's invoked due to the size pushing Nibiru and Earth apart, but the attraction is still there throughout. Nibiru has a retrograde orbit and rotation, so now Atlas has adopted this retrograde orbit. Now that's the key phrase. Nibiru has a retrograde orbit. Now Atlas has adopted this retrograde orbit. Now that's what the powers that be, the establishment and the scientific community, especially the astronomers, are desperate that you do not know about. They do not want you to know that Atlas is now moving in a retrograde orbit. Because if you were to know that, and if you were to accept that as scientific fact, then you would have to understand that there's something that's changing that orbit and the trajectory and path of Atlas. And what is that thing? That's what they don't want you to know about. It's Nibiru. Once again, the Nibiru cover-up has been in effect since the last day of December 1983, which an article appeared in the Washington Post. And that cover-up is still in effect, but the powers that be are in a bit of a panic now because of the many unexplained anomalies and strange effects in and around planet Earth being noticed by hundreds or thousands of people. And they're trying to explain those away using false, misleading pretexts and excuses. So meanwhile, the Nibiru cover-up crowd is left sputtering with new explanation for the change path and tail direction. So they're basically deciding to say, okay, there's a little bit of change. It's due to the outgassing, the ice of the comet melting and being released as jets of gas. So that they say, yeah, that's happening, but there's no real major change. But if they were to accept this claim or this explanation, it would be a completely different situation. And that's why they're fighting desperately against it. Next slide, please. Okay, here's a discussion of what Zetatalk calls the November approach, which they predict will reveal the existence of Nibiru. Quote, Nibiru is quickly approaching and Planet X will finally be revealed. With the visibility of Nibiru, full-blown martial law will be called. Now, in the last lecture I gave on the 2nd of October, I talked about the fact that in the United States in particular, de facto martial law is already in place in certain cities. New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, and Trump wants to extend it to other states, but there have been some setbacks because I think he tried to take over the California National Guard and move it up to Oregon, and that was objected to. They took it to the courts, and Trump got beat on that one. So he's still trying, and I think it will happen to a greater degree, greater or lesser degree, depending, but we're not sure of the exact timetable, the exact conditions. Will they call it de facto martial law? Very unlikely. And what will happen here in Australia when this occurs in America? What will Albanese and the federal government try to do here? What will they call it? Well, we don't know. We simply don't know, so we'll have to wait and see. Will schools be closed? Will the establishment explain the impending passage? Will Nancy be featured in the mainstream media? And those are all major questions, and we don't know the answers, even though November is not that far away. Here's what the Zeta state from this month, 21st of this month. November is when the Nibiru complex will move from the left of the sun to center in front of the sun. This allows sunlight to pass directly through the vast petrol and debris-ridden dust cloud, making Nibiru huge, like the mythological dragon with 7 heads of yore. The Nibiru cover-up hopes to confuse the public by claiming this is the comet Atlas. Meanwhile, the severe wobble, and that's the wobble that our planet Earth is undergoing on a daily basis. That's why the sun and the moon and the planets are rising in many cases and setting in places where they should not be. The severe wobble creates humongous storms, and the approaching Nibiru causes EMP outages and plane crashes, and sky fire and sky glow occur without explanation. If you follow the news, you would have heard about that massive hurricane that just hit Jamaica and now is hitting Cuba or just leaving Cuba. It killed dozens of people. It's probably one of the largest hurricanes on record. It may be the largest. But why is that happening? It's due to Nibiru. Does the establishment want you to understand that? Of course not. Next slide, please. All right, this is from a Zeta Talk commentary from last month. As the vast tail of Nibiru sweeps ever closer toward the hapless Earth, the petrol drama increases in frequency and scope. The Zeta Talk followers group post almost daily examples such as red dust forming orange clouds, petrol glazed rainbows on clouds, and burning petrol balls descending. And we can see a few of these images. The one from Florida on the top left is quite interesting. These are petrol glazed rainbows on clouds, actually quite beautiful, but a sign of Nibiru, the sign of the tail of Nibiru, which is full of petrol, magnetically charged petrol, is creating these images. And of course, the authorities, the powers that be, don't want people to know that. And then we see the photograph in the middle from Italy, and you get an example of sky fire. And these are explosions of petrol, ignitions of petrol, and thus explosions of petrol in the upper atmosphere, which are visible from the planet. And of course, why is this happening? Well, no explanation. The photograph from California in the lower left is quite interesting. It's actually quite a beautiful design of sorts because it's for people watching it or who photographed it in the sky, it would have been very strange, perhaps confronting, perhaps even terrifying. Why is this happening? What's going on? Well, no answer from the authorities. And on the right, the red dust from the tail of Nibiru, clearly caught on a photograph from Brazil. So all this is happening, and of course it would be reported at the local level, but at the state level or national level, there's complete silence. And certainly at the international level, there's silence because it's all due to Nibiru, and the Nibiru cover-up is still in force, still in effect. Next slide, please. Okay. A dramatic burning and spinning mass was captured in Canada on August the 28th of this year. I don't know the exact location, but some very interesting photographs. This was clearly not any of the excuses the Nibiru cover-up crowd offers. That is to say, a Chinese lantern, quite absurd, a drone, or space junk, or a UFO. It is Nibiru announcing itself. And this has been happening a lot in recent weeks and months, and it's probably going to increase according to the Zeta Talk predictions. And all this, of course, is being covered up by the establishment, the powers that be. Next slide, please. All right, this is a Zeta Talk post from this month. November is when the Nibiru complex will move from the left of the sun to center in front of the sun. Now, when they say left of the sun, from the northern hemisphere, it appears to be to the right of the sun at the 4 or 5 o'clock position. And here down under, it appears to be at the 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock position around the sun. This allows sunlight to pass directly through the vast petrol and debris-ridden dust cloud, making Nibiru huge, like the mythological dragon with 7 heads of yore. Now, these photographs were taken from November of 2020, 5 years ago, and they don't say where it was taken, but you can clearly see these dust clouds in front of the sun due to the tail of Nibiru, making the sun, well, appear rather strange and certainly not what anyone is used to seeing on a normal day. Next slide, please. Okay, this is from Zetatalk last month, September. Their comments on dragons. Dragons appear in prophecy due to their appearance during the passage. The Nibiru complex will stand between the earth and the sun, and with its writhing tail and many moon swirls will take on the appearance of a dragon. And you can see the various drawings above by various artists. And according to Zetatalk, this is directly related to previous passages of Nibiru, the last one being 1600 BC approximately, in which Nibiru appeared as a many-headed, perhaps seven-headed dragon. Next slide, please. Okay, Mother Shipton, a Yorkshire witch in the 1500s, known as a prognosticator, referred to the cataclysms being caused by a fiery dragon. And this is from one of her prophecies. For 7 days and 7 nights, man will watch this awesome sight. The tides will rise beyond their ken to bite away the shores, and then the mountains will begin to roar, and earthquakes split the plain to shore. Not every soul on earth will die, as a dragon's tail goes sweeping by. Not every land on earth will sink, but these will wallow in stench and stink. Of rotting bodies of beast and man, of vegetation crisped on land. Interesting prophecy, very poetically constructed and written. Has a certain appeal, actually, but what she's talking about is not a pleasant experience. It's the passage of Nibiru close to Earth and referring to the last weeks or last week or two before the pole shift itself. Next slide, please. Okay, Revelations 12 also uses the dragon analogy. And this is from Revelation 12, the woman and the dragon. 1, a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet and a crown of 12 stars on her head. So that's a very symbolic image of the cosmos as we view it, and the two major luminaries, the sun and the moon. And the 12 stars would obviously refer to the zodiac. 2, she was pregnant and cried out in pain as she was about to give birth. 3, then another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns on its heads. Interesting image. And many people over many centuries have pondered what can that possibly be referring to. 4, its tail swept a third of the stars out of the sky and flung them to the earth. The dragon stood in front of the woman who was about to give birth, so that it might devour her child the moment he was born. 5, she gave birth to a son, a male child who, quote, will rule all the nations with an iron scepter. And of course, that refers to dictator, some sort of person of immense power and authority who doesn't rule in a particularly pleasant or nice way. And that to me is reminiscent of the de facto martial law which Trump is gradually imposing in America, and which we may see in some version or other here in Australia. We shall see. These are prophecies were not, and prophecies sometimes don't come true, they're not correct, so we'll have to see what happens. And her child was snatched up to God and to his throne. 6, the woman fled before the wilderness to a place prepared for her by God, where she might be taken care of for 1,260 days. And this segment of Revelations continues. There's a whole other 10 or 12 sentences or slokas, if you want to call them, which I didn't include because it was perhaps a bit involved. But here we have a reference to Nibiru, especially the third sentence, an enormous red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns on its heads. Next slide, please. Nibiru is clearly the dragon, which has a string of pearls lineup of moon swirls nearby. And that's what the seven heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns refers to, according to Zetatalk. The 3 photos on the left were covered at the very beginning of the lecture, and there's some other photographs, 2 photographs on the right of the Nibiru phenomena. Next slide, please. Speaking of dragons, this was a post from Zetatalk from 20 years ago, July of 2005. Mankind has many myths about dragons throughout the world. In the Orient, the dragon is featured on pottery and in parades. And European myths are replete with knights in armor going into battle against fire-breathing dragons. The dragons invariably have wings and are shaped suspiciously like dinosaurs. Is there some basis in fact for this common human memory? Well, indeed there is. Where the dinosaurs died out long before mankind was engineered into being from ape stock, the Earth was not the only planet to give birth to such creatures. Evolution follows similar patterns, and where your Earth brought forth dinosaurs with wings, just so did other planets compatible with the Earth. Next slide. Next slide, please.
There it is.
Next slide. Okay. Continuing, your dragons were transplants brought to the Earth by early ambassadors from the service to self. Okay, now in the Zetatalk cosmology, there are 2 basic divisions of not only humans, but extraterrestrials and all life forms, namely service to others. Those are people who are caring and compassionate for others. And those are the so-called good people of the earth. And there's the opposite, the service to self, who are only interested in their self-glorification, whatever, self-promotion, the bad guys. The service to self anticipated an increased harvest of lackeys from the earth due to the fear and despair the dragons wrought. Now, that's a very interesting statement, in my opinion. Very interesting. It opens up a whole lot of metaphysical highways and byways, which we don't have time to go into, but it's a very interesting statement. So, the service to self, the bad guys, brought the dragons to earth to keep people terrified and performing as lackeys. Were the dragons intelligent and incarnated with the souls? No. On a scale of 1 to 10, where the average dog is a 10, a dragon was barely a 3. Now that's a very interesting statement as well, and once again opens up a lot of highways and byways which we don't have the time to go into. This is why, in spite of the massive size and capacity to fly as well as lumber over hill and dale, they were so easily slain. Dumb brutes. Hundreds were brought to earth and released on terrified villages. The dragons ate humans, which were neither swift runners nor able to barricade themselves in their mud huts, and were a tastier morsel than the deer, which ran fast and had taut, lean muscles. The legends speak of sacrifices, where humans would periodically offer one of their own to placate the dragon. Well, of course, this reduced the rampages, as dinner had been brought to the door. Interesting statement. Let's look at the next slide, the last slide. Where some dragons mated, they were scattered to begin with, and dying without progeny, eventually disappeared from the earth. There were perhaps a few hundred delivered, and their reign, ending only in the last millennia, lasted for thousands of years. The stories of dragons, all the more impressive as they were true, spread more widely than the dragons themselves. Did they breathe fire? No. But when roaring, open-mouthed, it felt like that to those within range, because the dragons had a hot breath and a big windpipe. And I guess for me, the image of human versus dragon, which most prominently sticks in my mind, is the Harry Potter movie. I think it's where he takes place in the competition for the Wizard's Cup, and all of the contestants they have a dragon's egg which they have to let hatch, and then they have to deal with the consequences. Okay, friends, well, that's today's lecture, and if you have any questions, please let me know.